What's up, friends? My name's Aaron Ciotti. I'm doing a live stream with just one camera. There we go, or monitor rather. Welcome to Sunday Q&A. This is going to be mainly you guys asking questions in chat, which I need to get up here. And but if the chat slows down a little bit and I get caught up, I'm going to do a little bit more work on this TP3 toothpick here. There's almost nothing left to be done. So we should be able to finish it, but you know how finishing stuff goes around here. It takes a long time. In the chat, Apache Smoke Wounded Sniper was first, David Pencilgwin was next, Expander, Kevin Sumner, Northern Tier FPV, Free Range Chicken Den 636, S Grace, Rogue Pilot, Del Squatcho. Ooh, that's the best YouTube name ever. O. Yeah, the middle O is capitalized. It might even be a 0. Gamma Gonad, Brandon's Baked Beans, Ram Jam, Chris Croft, JRFPV, Rainer, Richard, Dozer, Quadzimoto, Jory FPV, Pile of Carbon, Dozer again, Dayron USA, Wam FPV, Patio Patterson, Captain Calgary, Quadzimoto, Patio Patterson again. YouTube just scrolled me to the bottom, as it does. Mr. Huggy, Demenis, I've lost my place, I'm probably going to miss some people. Riot 9, Dan 636, Unlimited Vertical, 661, Gamma Gonad, Ben Markham, Scott RC Roscoe, Gillen, Bye John, North 49, Hillside, and Kevin Sumner. If I missed you, sucks to be you! Doesn't really. Who am I? If you want to talk directly to me in the chat, you need to have the correct monitor on your sharing thing. Let's turn on the right monitor and turn off the left monitor because there is no left monitor right now. Yeah, if you want to talk directly to me, all you've got to do is be like Apache Smoke Wounded Sniper and type CiottiFPV. Look at that. You don't have to put an @ in front of it, but you certainly can. Look at that. If you spell it correctly and if you don't put a space in between Ciotti and FPV, I will know that you're talking to me, and I will read your comment and reply. Free Range Chicken says howdy all, and CiottiFPV. Apache says what's up, hello to all. Dan636 says hello everyone. JR says what type CiottiFPV and Fells. JR might be stroking out. Quadzimoto says what's up, stay safe. Scroll. Scott Gillen says hi. Freelojo says procrastinators until tomorrow. Hey, so while we've got a bunch of people in here, and while it's early on, hold on, let me turn off the... Man, I cannot explain to you how much harder it is to do live streams with only one monitor. It's kind of wild. I will never take having two monitors for granted ever again. There we go. So, I talked about this on Friday's stream. This is the build kit that's going to be given away. I am going to do a giveaway for... I'm going to try the style of giveaway that all other YouTube channels are doing at the moment, which is buy some of my stuff, and the amount of money that you spend will get you put into the giveaway a bunch of times. CiottiFPV.com has a link to my Etsy store, my Fiverr page, and my Teespring store. For every $5 that you spend on any one of those, starting 2 days ago, so this starts now, I should probably run this for longer, but let's just try it. I'm going to run this until this Wednesday, Whoop Wednesday. This is a Whoop. This is a Whoop giveaway. Yeah, so between now, 2 days ago, and this Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, every $5 you spend on my Etsy has stickers and hardware and random stuff. Teespring has t-shirts, sweatshirts, mugs. Fiverr has basically one-on-one sessions with me. I can help you fly better in the simulator. I can help you build better by distilling down 5 years of blowing stuff up and tell you what not to buy and what to buy. And also, I talk to you about where you're going to fly, who's your favorite pilot, what are you going to do with your flight footage, right? Is it just for fun? Is it cinematic? I have a whole bunch of questions that I ask to get dialed in so that I can recommend the perfect frame, the perfect motors, the perfect propellers for your specific use, right? That's what I've been figuring out for 5 years. That's, the first couple of years of this hobby. And it's one of the really nice things about building your own stuff rather than buying binded flies, right? Binded flies just have whatever thrown at them. Building your own, you can pick the exact right setup of parts to fit you. And I can help you do that, right? Like, it took me forever to figure that out. So let me help you out with that. And then the third thing I'm doing on Fiverr is tuning. I can help you, tune your rigs, but in the process, I explain to you what I'm doing, and this way you don't have to come back to me. Hopefully, when you change motors or change props or something like that, I've sort of given you enough knowledge, and I give you like a little bit of a path. Like, hey, if you go with a less pitchy prop, you're going to want to move this up and this down, right? So I give you like a path forward. Also, we do this via Skype and Zoom, so you can record the whole session. So you don't have to try to remember all this stuff. You can record your one-on-one session where you're asking me all the questions that you can possibly imagine. or think up of rather. So yeah, Fiverr takes 13%, totally fine. Fiverr's messaging kind of sucks. So if you just want to contact me at CiottiFPV on Instagram or Facebook, or wherever you want, we can just set it up, pick a time, pick a date, and away we go. You don't have to book it through Fiverr. If you get in touch with me and book one of these sessions, they're just one-on-one sessions. They're all the same amount of money, and yeah, I just have the whole flight sim, build better, tune as like ideas to kind of get your to get you thinking. Those are also the things that I do the best. Like I typically don't recommend you book a session with me for like technical questions, like how do I set up OpenTX? I haven't set up OpenTX in like 3+ years. I don't necessarily remember. So I would be going onto YouTube and looking for actually I would probably be looking for a Blue Falcon video, rest in peace. Because yeah, so those are the things that I do really well. But when you get in touch with me, if you're saying like, hey, I want to book you to help me out with this, if I think I'm not going to be able to really give you your money's worth for it, I'm going to let you know. That's just, I'm not in it to make money. I'm in it to help you guys out. The fact that I make money and can do this full time is kind of wild. Speaking of, if you want to continue to see these live streams, CiottiFPV.com has a link to my Patreon. It's got a bunch of affiliate links, all kinds of good ways that you can support me directly. But yeah, so this is going to be the giveaway. It's a build kit. I just don't have... This has been like on deck to be built forever, and I have like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 other rigs that are on deck that are, yeah, higher priority than this. So I'm just going to give this build kit away. I think it has everything you need. 2 of these Beta FPV frames that are specifically meant for this really cool canopy that holds the Caddx Tarsier. There is a Caddx Tarsier in here. I don't know if it's a V1 or a V2. My guess is it's a V1. The little Beta FPV VTX that bolts right onto the top of this cool canopy. 2 of these 3S 300 mAh batteries, which fit perfectly in both of these frames. This frame is actually glow in the dark and limited edition, so don't break it, because you'll never be able to get it again. Caddx Tarsier ND filter. These are hard to find. Set of props. FR Sky XM, little tiny receiver. A set of Newbie Drone Flow. These are brand new. I've never even hooked these up. I want to say they're 1202s. Yeah, 1202, 11,400 kV. So you'll definitely need to motor limit these down for a 3S battery for sure. I would probably say like maybe start off with like a 70% motor limit in the PID tab. And then if that's not enough power, take it up from there. And an AIO, Beta FPV F4 2 to 4S AIO 12 amp. So yeah, like an entire build kit, right? Like probably $200+ worth of stuff. And all you've got to do is spend a minimum of $5 on my Etsy store, my Teespring store, or book a session with me. If you book one of these sessions with me, if you book a half an hour, that's going to be 8 entries. If you book an hour session with me, that's going to be 16 entries to win this stuff. There's no limit. If you go and spend $1,000 on my Etsy store, you're probably going to win this. I wouldn't recommend that because, I don't know. Do whatever you want. What am I saying? I do recommend that. Go spend $1,000 on my Etsy store. Buy everything that's on the Etsy store. I don't know if I have $1,000 worth of shit on the Etsy store, but yeah, there's no limit. So I don't know. Let's see how it goes. Most YouTube channels will do this for like a month. So your chances of winning become like impossible. I'm doing this for, I haven't seen any orders come through, so realistically I think this starts right now. So I'm doing this for 3 days. So maybe there's only a couple of people that enter, and then you're gonna have a pretty damn good chance of winning this entire build kit. And each piece of this build is worth more than $5. So even if you buy a sticker, could get a hell of a lot of stuff for the price of a sticker. And so yeah, let's see how that goes. I don't know. I want this in the hands of somebody that's gonna put it up in the air, because I really dig that camera mount setup. Having the tarsier up on top like that and the lens is kind of pushed forward, there's not going to be much, if any, duct in view. So yeah, that'll be a really cool build. Looking forward to seeing somebody making some cool footage with that. Let me get caught up on chat here. This light, I was thinking this light, oh, you know, I unplugged this light, so it went up to full beans. Let me kick this down a little bit. Come on, come on, come on, coming on down, coming down, coming down, coming down, coming down. A little too much. A little bit more, a little bit more, come on. Come on. Come on, RF remote, work. Work! Yeah, there it goes. It's different because I'm wearing a light shirt, but I think that's about right. Chat, what's up? Dozer FPV says thought. Don't know why he says thought, but you know, you guys are allowed to tag me and say the word thought. It's all good. Freelojo says, oops, I can't smell unite tomorrow procrastinators. Scott Gillen says, I'm using my little brown handbook, updating my resume while listening to my FPV pairs, he says. Thanks for you, bro. How is your TMotor Electronics? The TMotor flight controller that went into one of the 5-inch rigs has been flawless. And yeah, from what I've heard from other people, TMotor Electronics are the best that we've got at the moment. If you can find an Acon 35 amp ESC in stock, I'm still gonna say go with that. They are a known quantity. They're known to be like pretty much indestructible. But yeah, they're getting harder and harder to find, unfortunately. So TMotor Electronics seem to be, and I know they're expensive, but if you buy something that's cheaper, it's gonna fail. And then you're gonna have to start all over again. So really think about saving 10 or 20 or 30 bucks, because the cheap stuff fails, like full stop. It just does. I've spent so much time and effort and money trying to find the cheaper electronics, the magical unicorn cheap electronic, whatever, flight controller, ESC, VTX, that holds up, and it doesn't exist. And I think that's because nobody that works at these manufacturers are driving Ferraris. Like, everybody that manufactures FPV electronics is like us, you know, they're not like scraping by, but like, yeah, it's not like a high yield, high market. There's no Elon Musk's making FPV electronics. So you get what you pay for, right? Because you give them money, and then nobody at these companies is taking a ton of that money for themselves, it doesn't seem. So however much you pay is however much quality control you're going to get, and you know, the quality of the components themselves that go on the boards. If you pay more, that company is going to have more money to buy better quality components. I guess you could maybe argue that DJI is the exception, right? I'm sure that there are people driving that park a Ferrari in a DJI parking lot, but oddly enough, DJI stuff is really good quality. So yeah, they're the exception, but the exception as well. I don't know, that's just my take on it. I could be dead wrong. Everybody working at every FPV manufacturer could be driving a Maybach, but I'm pretty sure they aren't, because I've met some of them, and they're driving Civics and Accords, which is fine. But you get what you pay for 99% of the time in FPV. Tommy Lee Newton Jr. says, what's up, Tolkien FPV? It's Tolkien FPV. Glad to have you back, Tolkien. I remember you from a while ago, right? I haven't seen you in a bit. YouTube just did the thing. Schizophrenic FPV says, I killed the AIO in the whoop you sent me last month. It died in a tremendous crash power looping over a ceiling fan blade. New AIO is on the way. I mean, killing electronics in a tremendous crash, I'm fine with that. AIOs we know are awful. You know, tiny whoops, it's the only way. So, yeah, killing an AIO in a rig that you have to put an AIO in a tremendous crash, that's an accomplishment. Schizophrenic FPV is living his best life with that crash right there, and you can tell it by I can tell that he's not upset about it by just sort of the way that he typed that out. Breaking stuff in this hobby is part of the game. Get used to it and enjoy it, right? Like, so I come from motorsports where all of the repairs have to be done in the either boiling hot or freezing cold parking lot or garage if you're lucky enough to have a house, and it's very expensive, and you get dirty and you smash your fist into sharp metal and you bleed, and it's just awful. This hobby, you can do all of your repairs from the comfort of your own home at a nice, well-lit workbench with small, simple tools, and you pay 2-digit prices for things, whereas on the Cobra and on the Miata, everything seems to be 3 and sometimes 4 digits. So yeah, appreciate. And if I then go, if I would then go out on track and slam it into a concrete barrier, I could get hurt, maybe even killed. Whereas, with FPV, we're never going to get hurt. I mean, we could get hurt. We're probably not going to get... I guess if you hit yourself in the face with a 5-inch rig at full steam, you never know. We've luckily not had that happen before, but you guys know what I'm saying. So yeah, appreciate the fact that we can crash and we don't get physically hurt, and then the repairs are cheap and easy and you can do them at home. This hobby is fantastic. I don't get quite the adrenaline dump that I used to get in the mountains or at the racetrack because, I used to be physically in peril, whereas now, there's really no chance that that I could physically get hurt. So there's, a little bit less of an adrenaline dump, but I can fly a lot more. Track time is very, very, very expensive. So that's the offset, right? I don't get as much of an adrenaline hit, but I can get a big adrenaline hit for a lot, every day. I can go out and fly every single day and get a half an hour, 2-hour adrenaline fix. So yeah, FPV for life, yo. Best hobby ever, as P. Richard Scott rightly said one night when he was hanging out here. Espander says, COVID was very mild for me and gone in 3 days. Wow. But still testing slightly positive on day 9. Getting bored, can't go fly. Have quad parts delivered to my work and can't pick them up. That's the worst. It'll be over before you know it, Espander. Dusty Joe FPV says, your thoughts about making a 4.3 RIP preset? RIP preset? What's RIP preset? I am going to make presets for sure in 4.3. I think I'm going to wait for 4.3 stable to come out just in case they change anything. But I am going to make presets. I'm going to do my, pretty so, Betaflight defaults are very soft and very safe on purpose. The Betaflight devs do that because they know that their flight software is the best, and it is the one that absolutely everyone should be using, right? So the fact that everybody should be using it, they want to cater to everyone. This has always been the case. So they set their defaults to be soft and backed off so that if somebody in, the middle of nowhere Uzbekistan is building a rig with old parts because they don't have access to these new fancy parts that we all have that are, in the US and other, super built up areas with shops and stuff like that, they can get their rig in the air and they can be good to go. And it's also, I really like that approach because if you have a rig that is acting up, for me, I use the Betaflight defaults as the perfect control. If I build a rig and it will not fly properly on the Betaflight defaults, there is something mechanically wrong with that rig. Like, that is a surefire sign to not spend any time trying to tune that rig to work, because there is a problem mechanically. And if you could put in 10, 20 hours and you could probably get that rig up in the air, but it is going to fly like dog shit, because you're going to have to pull everything down so far that, yeah, it's just going to fly terrible. And what's the point? Like, if it's going to fly, if it's going to fly bad, like, what? No, fix it so that it flies properly, because to some extent you're not really going to learn much. Like, I don't know, I guess maybe if you're just desperate to get up in the air, but then you just take the Betaflight defaults and you just turn them down, basically, right? So, yeah, the stock Betaflight tune is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful starting point. But if you build a rig with motors, frame, ESC, flight, all the things from the last, like, 3 years, basically, it's going to be totally fun. And if you put it together properly, right, this is another thing where it's like, oh, there's a mechanical problem. Oh, look, I forgot to tighten all the screws up. Good to go, right? So, yeah, it weeds out those things. If you build a rig with components from the last couple of years and you put it together properly, the Betaflight stock tune will be backed off. So the preset that I'm most interested in putting up is what I fly on most of my stuff, believe it or not, which is just the Betaflight defaults pushed a little bit. Basically, the P gains and the D gains are kicked up by 10 to 15 points. And then I have a bunch of stuff. The filtering is made a little bit more aggressive, but totally within reason. It's a very safe kind of, and it's my starting point. I never put a rig up in the air on stock Betaflight. I always do this little, like, starting point, push it a little bit kind of preset. And it's not a preset yet, but I'm going to make it a preset. And most of the people, so when I do a one-on-one session with someone that says to me that they're going to crash a lot, this is the tune that I have them put on their rig. And everybody that I've done that with has said, oh my God, it flies so good. And then down the road, they tell me, oh my God, I can pound the shit out of this thing and it just doesn't care. And I can just keep flying it more and more and more. And, you know, I don't have to replace props. I can just bend them back, stuff like that. So I'm really interested. I'm definitely going to put that preset up so that you guys have access to it. And yeah, if you know, if it's like your second or your third, or maybe not your second, if it's your third build or your fourth build, or if you just pay attention when you're doing your builds, you can use this as your first go. Although I still do recommend for you guys that you start off with stock Betaflight, just to put it up in the air, just make sure the motors don't get hot, and then you can move to this preset. You know, I can start with this preset because I build with known electronics. I've done hundreds of builds at this point. I've worked with hundreds of people at this point to get a feel for their builds, right? So, you know, I can kind of do that. I would not necessarily recommend everybody else do that, especially because the presets are going to make it so easy. You do a build, you flash stock Betaflight on, you hover test it, you put a battery through it to make sure the motors aren't getting hot, and then you plug it into Betaflight and you dump the preset on there and you do it again. I don't want you to immediately put the preset on and there was something going on and you cook an ESC. You know, I don't want you losing a $60, $70, $80 ESC to be on my conscience. You know what I mean? Great question, Dusty Joe. Oh boy. Hold on. Scrolling back up. Wam FPV says, you have $75K to spend on a car. What would you get? 75 grand. So it wouldn't be something new, because with new cars, 75 grand doesn't really buy you all that. I guess it depends. But 75 grand building something used, my God, you can make something really fun. 75. It's not enough to go like full-blown dream car, like Ferrari F40 or you can spend I would probably build a race car. I would probably build a no-holds-barred race car. Not sure what chassis I would build it on, though. But 75 grand will build you... you actually wouldn't believe how quickly you could get through 75 grand building a full-tilt race car. I would probably build a time attack car. I would probably do a time attack, something rear-wheel drive, maybe like E36. So off the top of my head, E36 with an engine swap, maybe the European engine. I forget the code. It might be S54. I'm probably wrong. Basically set it up to make a reliable 300 to 350 or so horsepower, 275 width tires, all the safety gear, cage, fire suit. I would need to get a new helmet. These helmets are a little old. Helmets have a 10-year lifespan, and then they don't pass tech, and these are both of these Stig helmets are way beyond that. So yeah, that's realistically what I would do, because the Mazda 2 is a completely fine daily. Someday I'll get the Miata back, and then that's fun for just whatever. And then yeah, full tilt race car is has been the dream for a long time. It's building a car that's streetable that also works on the track is a really interesting engineering challenge, but there's certain safety gear and the when you start to get competitive in the different classes, a lot of times you have to go with, for example, spring rates that are just completely uncomfortable on the street. So if you want to be competitive, usually the whole street car that also works on the racetrack goes right out the window. So yeah, I need to buy like a trailer. I need to figure out how to tow the damn thing. So yeah, 75 would go very quick. So yeah, realistically, I'd have to find the cheapest pickup truck I could, put a hitch on it, buy a trailer. Yeah, 75 grand would go quick on a race car setup. My God, yeah, it would. Demenis says they already released release candidate 2. That is, wow. That means that we should have the stable January 9th, maybe by the end of the month. That's exciting. I didn't see that. By John says, I think he meant 4.3 Betaflight preset for a Ripsqueak build. Oh, well, yeah, my Ripsqueak builds have that same safe tune on them, pretty much. Yeah. Again, if the mechanical system on the build is proper, right motors, right props, like motors and props that match each other, motors and props that match the all-up weight of the rig, right? Everything that we talk about all the time on here. So like basically, if you look up in my videos here on the channel and search for Ripsqueak or search for Tiny Whoop or search for whatever you're trying to build, if I've done a build, I have put, a combination of parts on it that makes a lot of sense, that, is basically well thought out from doing this for 5 years. You don't have to do anything wacky at that point with Betaflight. You can just run it on the stock default, and if that's not tight enough for you, you can move up to this preset that I'm going to have available at some point here. JRFPV says, I'm having that same problem with a Glide 5-inch. Had to pull everything way down to get it to fly right. Any suggestions? Super tight build, in my opinion. There has to be something. Yeah, JR, I mean, there just has to be something going on. It could be that whatever the props, like, so back in the old days of building micros, for example, none of the propellers that were being manufactured by anyone but GemFan were balanced. So the stock tune didn't fly right because all of the propellers that we had available to us were causing so many vibrations that then got into the gyro that, the stock tune couldn't handle it. So it could be that. I don't know what props you're running, but try a different propeller. Check your motors. I've shown a bunch of times on here how to check your motor vibrations in the motor tab of Betaflight. Pull your props off, check the motors. Make sure all your screws are tight. Maybe the frame that you're using doesn't have the carbon fiber weave going the right direction on the arms. That's a big problem. This is one of the things that makes troubleshooting really difficult, right? Is that, like, I haven't bought every single frame that exists to know which ones are horrible and which ones are not. When you're doing a mechanical troubleshoot on a rig, you want to look for other people that are using, you want to look for other educated, experienced people that are running those same components and message them, say, hey, have you ever had any problems with the motors that you're running? And while you're at it, try to get a feel from them, like, hey, how long have you been flying? How many rigs do you have, right? Because if it's their first rig, they have no idea what's what. If it's their second rig, they probably still don't know what's what. Because they haven't been in it long enough to have problems to know, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah. Or it could be that you could have bought all good parts, but a bad gyro made it onto the T-Motor flight controller. And even though a shitload of people have had great luck with T-Motor flight controllers, you just happen to get one with a bad gyro. That still happens. That is still a big part of this. But that is almost impossible to troubleshoot, right? So you want to go from easiest to troubleshoot to hardest, most pain in the ass to troubleshoot. So yeah, look at your components, see if this is also why I suggest that, as boring as it is, you guys try to buy the components that people like me, other people who've been in the game for a long time, and specifically people that fly hard and crash a lot, because those people go through they get to see a lot of different electronics and frames and motors and props, and those are the people that typically figure out which ones don't hold up. So yeah, the temptation is always to get the newest thing, right? So as you go in the new product section of Get FPV, and it's like, oh, there's a brand new flight controller out. Oh, it must be the best one ever. It's brand new, right? And you buy that one. Well, what you're doing is you're signing up to be R&D, because the dirty little secret of FPV is none of these manufacturers seem to do any R&D. They leave that up to us, and it makes sense and it's kind of our fault, because we demand that they sell stuff cheap. We really gravitate towards cheap stuff, which it makes sense for us to do that because we're just going to smash it into the goddamn concrete, right? So, like, why wouldn't we want to buy the cheapest possible stuff? Because no matter what, we're going to crash, right? So it's our fault, but we're doing it, we're not doing it because we're being cheap bastards. I am. But some of us aren't doing it because we're cheap bastards, right? So yeah, we have this vicious cycle that we've put into motion, and unfortunately, one of the things that the manufacturers have seemingly given up on is quality control and or R&D on their products. Some of these manufacturers have sponsored pilots, and they will send those sponsored pilots the products before they release to get some feedback on them. I've been involved in some of that, and what I can tell you about that is, so far my involvement has been, they're actually sending it for marketing purposes. They're sending it so early so that you have time to fly it and make content with it, so that when they launch, everybody can put their videos out and they can get a huge hit of sales on this brand new product. And the reason that I say that is that every single time I've gotten a pre-release product, I've provided them with feedback, and nothing changes, nothing happens. And that's more than likely because they can't just make like a couple of these things. They have to make a whole bunch at once. So by the time that they send any of us the pre-release products, they've got 10,000 behind, not 10,000, they've got, what's a realistic number in this hobby? 1,000, let's say. They've done 1,000 run, so they can't. They've got 1,000 sitting there because they had to get them all made at once. And it's like, you know, thanks for your feedback. We'll fix it after we sell 1,000. Well, after they sell 1,000, enough time has gone by where it benefits them to start the hype train all over again and change something in the design. Call it, you know, so-and-so 2 or Pro or give us more of your money. And hopefully at that point, they use that feedback and push it into that next model, which you know we do see, and maybe that makes more sense doing it that way because then you have a differentiation, right? One of the things I really don't like is in the middle of a product run when they change something and they don't tell you about it. This has been happening with motors recently. A motor will come out and it'll be coggy. And then all of a sudden you'll get that same motor from another manufacturer and it'll be nice and smooth. And it's like, what? Fuck? Like, and the problem with that is if you have a rig with a coggy motor and then a bunch of smooth motors, whoo boy, that is going to cause some weird tuning problems that are going to be even more impossible to figure out. So, yeah, maybe it's better that they do it the way they're doing it, but you know that's been my experience. So yeah, JR, it's got to be a mechanical problem, and it's hard. It's very, very hard, but the process that you're about to embark on is going to serve you very well for the rest of this hobby. Learning and figuring out how to troubleshoot these things and how to look at each individual component and really think about what's happening in this rig is extremely valuable. That is, you could argue that that's kind of what separates the men from the boys in this hobby. Like when you've been into this hobby for long enough, you can do that, and you can kind of tell, like if you're flying with a bunch of people and you know, you land and it's making a funny noise, a bunch of people are going to come over and start throwing suggestions at you because, you know, everybody always wants to help. And it's really easy to tell how long somebody's been into the hobby by how asinine the suggestion that they give you to fix the problem is. And yeah, it kind of drives me insane when that happens, because when you offer someone advice, like when you don't know what you're talking about and you offer someone advice, typically like most people's default is to not think you're full of shit, right? So most people will take that advice and then spend their life following that advice to try to fix the problem. So like I don't fault that person, right? Like I fault the person giving the advice, and like I get it, right? Like you want to help, and you bought your first rig a month ago, and you kind of sort of had a problem that was maybe a little bit like the one that the other person is having, right? But like it's just not helpful. It really isn't. So yeah, I don't know. Be careful with unwarranted advice. I don't know. And I don't know what the solution is. I think a part of the solution is being very transparent about your experience, right? Instead of like, oh, turn your P gains down, right? Instead of that, like, you know, hey, I've been flying for 6 months. I had a rig that was doing something similar. I turned my P gains down and it helped it, but it also made it fly like absolute ass. So just, you know, be warned. You know what I mean? Like, that's a much better suggestion than, oh, your rig's making noise, turn the P gain down. Well, you know, I have a bent prop, but I'm a new pilot, so, oh, all right, this person seems to know what they're talking about. I'll turn my P gains down. Oh, look, it made the problem a little bit better. Great. I put a fresh set of props on. Oh, my rig flies like assholes. Now my rig is always going to fly like assholes because this moron told me to turn my P gains down, right? You know, like, I'm being dramatic with it, but I think you guys know what I'm saying. Fluffs Flyin' says, what about your rule not sharing your PIDs because every build is different? Great point, Fluff. Fluff is paying attention. That's amazing. This is why I do not share my PIDs, because of everything that we've been talking about here. But everybody else's, now that presets are going to be available in Betaflight, everybody is going to have a preset up there, and everybody is going to run, nobody's going to run stock Betaflight anymore. You know, like, as soon as anybody puts a rig together, other than people that are actually paying attention to this kind of a conversation, right? Everybody's going to put a preset on. So I actually don't have a problem, because of how soft my preset is. I don't have a problem putting it up there, because quite honestly, I know you guys are, you know, I know the general FPV public is going to just go directly to the presets. I actually feel safer with that being my preset, that's not super aggressive. You know what I'm saying? I wish there was a way to, like, name my preset, like, after this, you know, after stock PIDs are okay, try this, but whatever. But yeah, Fluff, that's a you're gonna do all right in FPV, Fluff. You're paying attention to the right things, man. Freelo just says, the engine I want because race car is a Sonny Leonard 1001 cubic inch. Oh God. 1001 cubic inch. Oh boy, yeah. Straight line things are fun. With a ton of power, straight line things are a lot more fun. I got very burned out, very bored with straight line shenanigans in the early days of my motorsports obsession, because 300-ish horsepower is just not enough. Like, you don't really have to drive that. You can pretty much learn how to launch a 300 horsepower rear-wheel drive car, at least with big fat tires, in like 2 or 3 trips to the drag strip, and then there's no real skill involved. It's just shit talking and my dick's bigger than yours. Not really, because we're both overcompensating with muscle cars. Tom's lazy says Porsche with less kilometers, e.g. miles on it. You know, Tom's, I am actually not. This is usually a very unpopular opinion, especially with people that have not driven Porsches at the limit of traction. But I am not a fan of Porsches. For a daily, maybe. I gotta make the font bigger on this. I can't even read that. Whoever just subscribed, thanks for subscribing. I also need to get the. I need to figure out why the sounds aren't working on that. Porsches at the limit of traction with the engine behind the rear wheels are a scary thing. I drive for the love of driving, and a part of that is playing around with slip angle. Some people drive to go really fast, and those are people that do really well in Porsches. A Porsche with all that weight all the way far back, when you start to yaw the car, when you start to slide the car, there's all that weight all the way in the back, so it creates this momentum. So when the car starts to let go, it's got more momentum all the way out, right? Like a long lever, like a motor on the end of our arms. And it's harder to catch. It wants to just keep rotating. I actually prefer front engine cars because they have a big chunk of mass up front, so the rear end will come out and in, will go in and out of slip angle or yaw, with much less momentum, which makes it much easier to catch, which makes it much easier to play around with. I'm not talking about drifting either. Like drifting is at like a 45, 50 degree angle, and it's just all show. It's just showing off. I'm talking about 5 to 10 degrees of slip angle, which is where tires work the best. Basically, what you do with 5 to 10 degrees of slip angle is you make the rear tires drive into the corner as well, where the front, you turn your front tires and they have a little bit of an angle, and that's what makes them turn. Well, the rear tires are just going straight, so they're just getting drug along. If you get the rear tires to rotate out a little bit, they're driving into the corner now. So that's the way that a car corners the best. But it's very difficult to maintain that little tiny bit of slip angle. Porsche's just mechanically, the mechanical system of a Porsche is kind of the worst to do that little dance. And Porsche tax is pretty brutal. Porsche tax being everything that ever breaks or everything that you ever buy for a Porsche is way more expensive. I'm not a Porsche guy. I've driven quite a few in anger. I've instructed many folks over the years and that have driven them, and they're hard to slide around, which is not my bag, but amazing cars. I mean, arguably I don't even know if I have to say arguably. I think it's just sort of the best engineered sports car ever, because they haven't changed anything, right? Like, it's been the same design for 40, 50, 60 years. Engine all the way in the back, similar styling, right? They've just made tiny little changes. And it really shows, because they are amazing cars. I'm actually a pretty big fan of the Cayman and the Boxster, but I can't get them in manual anymore, which is a terrible shame. T-Bird says, what's up? Finally made it. You can start now. Lo-Fi Express says, can you give me a shout out? What kind of a shout out do you want, Lo-Fi Express? I just said your name twice. Is that enough? I think that's all Lo-Fi Express wanted. S. Grace says, how about as soon... I just said it a third time. How about as soon as the quad is near your Wi-Fi after a test run, an AI downloads the black box and sends back adjusted PIDs automatically to the quad, and you could just go fly another battery. The AI tuning thing, I don't think that will ever really work. It's been attempted in the past, and I just don't know. Automatically, like a rig automatically black boxing and sending it to your computer, that would be rad for you to then take a quick look at. But the AI tuning thing, I just don't know if that's ever going to be a real thing. If nothing else, then because tuning is a very personal process. Like, my tune, most pilots will hate. Race pilots will despise my tune. A racing pilot will not be cool with any part of my tune, because I don't race. I fly very cinematic, and I set my tune up to smooth out my inputs, and to smooth inputs out, the drawback is latency. Arguably the biggest part of tuning is tuning the rig for you. Yes, there is some element of tuning it for the motors, the props, the all-up weight, stuff like that, but believe it or not, let me think about this for a second. Yeah. It was different. We used to tune just to get the damn thing to fly properly. But the stock Betaflight tune is so good, and the components are now so good, that stock tune flies pretty damn good. So if you're going to change that, you're going to change it to suit yourself. And we've talked on here before about, in my opinion, if you want to be a better pilot, like if your main concern right now is trying to get better as a pilot, you should go to a stock tune. because the stock tune is going to prop wash more, it's going to throttle chop bobble more, it's going to do a bunch of the bad behaviors that you as a pilot can fly around. And if you want proof of this, look at pro pilots from 5 years ago, 4 years ago. They were on horrible flight firmware, horrible components, horrible video, a bunch more latency than we've got. Like, the deck was stacked against them. But if you look at their best edits, it looks like today. Yes, they've edited out a bunch of prop wash and throttle chop bobbles and stuff like that, but they were able to fly. Like, those rigs flew horrible. They flew so bad, but they were still able to produce footage that looks great. And it, in my opinion, it made them a better pilot for that, right? Because when you're flying and the rig starts to prop wash, your brain, which is a connection machine, right? Your brain is a pattern machine. Your brain is going to connect what is happening with the prop wash. So you were just flying really fast straight forward, you whipped it around, and you started to add throttle. It's going to prop wash. Your brain's going to go, oh, when I do that, it makes it prop wash. Okay. So two things are going to happen. You're either going to go, oh, I just won't do that anymore. I won't go really fast and then turn around like that, right? Maybe I just won't do that movement anymore. Or you're going to go, let me tune that out. And so if your first rig, this is like with a lot of things, right? Like a lot of things that we get into, we always want to get like the best quality whatever. I pick up tennis. I want to get the best quality tennis racket. Well, if you use a shitty racket for a while, which most of us do because, I don't think many of us are independently wealthy to just pick up a new hobby and just go all in and spend a ton of money immediately, right? We usually start off with like a cheap racket to see if we actually like playing tennis so that we don't waste a whole bunch of money. I think sometimes we need to remind ourselves that we can sell things. If we buy the $10,000 racket, we can maybe sell it for $9,990. Maybe not, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, using garbage gives you an appreciation and it teaches you things. It's like swinging with a weighted bat, right? In the batter's box, you swing with a heavy weighted bat, and then you take the weight off and you go smash a baseball 450 feet. Is that how... I forget. I used to play baseball. I used to know the distance for a home run. I guess it's different in every stadium. But, yeah, you know what I'm saying? So, in my opinion, if the goal is to get better as a pilot, and especially if nobody other than you is watching your flight footage, fly a stock tune. Because that's going to show you all of these behaviors that the rigs struggle with. And if you can both learn to tune that out and fly around it, if you do those two things, you're never going to have prop wash again. You're never going to have throttle shot bobbles again. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. I shouldn't say AI tuning is never going to happen. It is absolutely going to happen. But an AI tune is not necessarily going to be what works, a tune that works best for your flying, right? Because the AI tune is probably going to be a really sharp tune, right? Because that's correct. But if you're a cinematic pilot, that's going to look bad, especially if it's cold out. If it's cold out and your fingers are kind of shaky and you've got this AI, racing tune, you're going to see every little twitch of your fingers. The way that I tune, it smooths that stuff out. My fingers are not perfectly rock steady, right? I'm not that great of a pilot. So I use my tune to cover my ass a little bit, and it makes the flight footage look better. That works for me because this is what I do for a living, so my flight footage needs to look good. If you're flying for fun, who cares if your flight footage looks good, right? You're going to show it to people, and they're going to be like, oh, God, because you're going to be doing flips and rolls and stuff, and that's what the normies do when we show them flips and rolls footage. So who cares, right? Yeah, so there you go. There's a long answer to a short question. Really good question, though, S. Grace. Steve FPV says, love you, man. Good stream. Thank you, dude. YouTube just scrolled me to the bottom. Working my way back up. Oh, wow, I'm way behind. All right, let me stop giving long answers to short questions. I'm going to get caught up on the chat, and then we'll see if we can actually finish this toothpick. Ian Stamatic says, what are your thoughts on 6S versus 4S for freestyle 3-inch build for proximity and stick bang style flying? Absolutely do not do it. There is zero benefit to going up to 6S on a micro. The only reason why we went up to 6S on 5-inch freestyle rigs is because we kept getting heavier and heavier and heavier as the cameras got heavier and heavier. And then we started to see the amps go up like over 100, and that's too much. When the amps go up over 100, now you're introducing a significant amount of heat and loss into that 4S system. So by going up to the higher voltage of 6S, it brought that heat down. So the voltage and amps are a little bit of a balancing act. So basically, a 5-inch 6 to 7 to 800 gram freestyle rig, the best balance of amps to voltage is 6S. On a 3-inch rig, that if you go up to 6S, that balances off, and you've got too much voltage and not enough amps, and there's no real significant loss in doing that per se. Like there's no, like it's you don't get like shorter run times or anything like that, but there's also no gains to doing it. And the losses actually show up in things like durability. The little 20 by 20 ESCs or the AIOs, they blow up as it is. So if you're going to then jam a bunch more voltage down their throat, they're going to start blowing up even more. And so you've got no benefit, and you've got a less durable setup, and also 3-inch rigs are so small that they're kind of twitchy by nature. So by going up to 6S, you make them even more twitchy. And then the flight footage looks even more kind of out of control and like, unwatchable. So yeah, there is zero, realistically, there is almost no reason in going 6S on a 3-inch rig. The only possible reason to do it is that to get more of our money, the manufacturers have put 6S on this nonstop hype train, and they're able to sell people that don't know this 6S rigs that already have 4S rigs because it's better, because it's great, and because it's the new hot thing. And what has happened is they've done that enough, and enough people that haven't been paying attention have bought into that, where the KV on the motors has started to really come down. But there are good motors that are a high enough KV to run on 4S properly. There are less of them, but they do exist, and I talk about them constantly on this live stream. Every single one of my micro builds is 4S, so if you look up any previous live stream where I'm building a micro, you're gonna have a motor on your screen that is one of the good ones. So yeah, there are motors out there for 4S. Technically, there are more for 6S, but the negatives are, it just sucks. ESCs are expensive, and blowing them up is a pain in the ass because it's hours of work to get them out of there and to replace them, and there's no benefit whatsoever. So don't do it. Definitely don't do it. Rob Exton says hello. Athix says, I had my glide rocket off an arm due to PIDs being too high. Oh, right. Yeah, yep. So the Athix has given us a perfect example why putting a brand new rig up in the air on stock PIDs first is really important, because, you know, you just spent all that time building it. You don't want it to just fly away and be gone forever. Dozer up. Hey, by the way, at the end of the live stream on Friday, I thought that I bricked that V2 B-Brain Acro B AIO, and I didn't. The USB cable failed. Like, I plugged the rig in, I did the update, I copied the dump into the diff into the CLI, and I unplugged it, and when I plugged it back in, the cable must have shit the bed. Because after the stream, I tried a different cable, and everything was fine. So, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. But, I mean, you guys saw it on the stream. I plugged it, I unplugged it, I did everything that I possibly could. I don't know, it was really, really weird. Really, really, really weird. Dozer FPV says, best motor size for beta FPV, 85X with HD0. Depends on what you want, Dozer. Do you want a cinematic rig? Do you want a freestyle rig? Beta FPV 85X is typically something that is going to be a cinematic rig, but I'm not going to make that assumption. So yeah, tell me, I need to know more about what the intended usage of the rig is going to be. Because cinematic rigs, you're going to want less power so that you have more throttle resolution. One of the things that makes cinematic footage look bad, in my opinion, is a lack of elevation control. You bounce up and down, you bounce up and down, you bounce up and down, you bounce up and down. And an easy way to produce that is to have a really overpowered motor. The more power a rig has, the more sensitive the throttle is. So for a cinematic rig, you basically want as little power as you can stomach, because the less power the rig has, the more throttle resolution. If you move the stick a little bit and the rig doesn't have a lot of power, it's just going to gently raise elevation, and that's not going to show up in the HD footage. Whereas if you want a freestyle rig that's really fun to fly, you probably want a whole bunch of power so you can fling it up over trees and stuff. Espander says, see that on Facebook all the time. CiottiFPV, yep, it is absolutely rampant. It is so bad on Facebook that I can't even spend time in the Facebook groups anymore. Because every single time that somebody has a question, there are 10 completely wrong answers. Or just answers that, like, I just saw it before the stream. Somebody asked what motors he should put on his 2.5-inch rig. That's the whole question. What motors should I put on my 2.5-inch rig? That's it. And there's 10 people saying, oh, you should put 1404s on. Oh, you should put 1304s on. Oh, you should put 1204s on. Oh, you should put 1505s on. And so, like, the only reply that I could have was, we need to know, like, a lot more. Like, specifically, what's the, like, are you carrying an HD what I said is, what's the payload? And then I explained a little bit. I said, like, I don't understand why anybody is giving you any suggestions without knowing whether or not you're going to be picking up a 20-gram camera or a 120-gram camera. And yeah, like that's it. And like, I just can't, like, if I spend more than 20 minutes on not even 2 minutes on FPV forums at this point, I can't do it. I just can't do it. It's just a sea of misinformation, and that just drives me crazy, because then people buy the wrong thing and they have rigs that fly like a bag of smashed assholes, and then it's, they quit the hobby, and I don't want that. It's happened to me a lot. And I've wasted a lot of money, and I don't have money to waste like that. So it pisses me off. So Scott Gillen says, hey, I have a FR Sky XM Plus to give away for free if you want it. I'll for sure put that in a giveaway, Scott. Thank you, dude. Message me somewhere and I'll give you my address. Rob Axelson says the beta with Betaflight, it's going to be easier. Rates is what you should share or advise for new pilots. I got to be honest, I kind of disagree with that a little bit. I think that everybody should be setting their rates 100% for themselves. Like, looking at somebody else's rates, in my opinion, does nothing for you. You could argue that it will make you fly a little bit like that person, but not really. I can fly Steele's rates and make footage that looks exactly like my footage, or I can fly Drew's rates. It's, you know, it's how you're moving your fingers. Setting your rates is a fiercely individual thing, in my opinion. So I don't really see much value to sharing rates, but I probably will anyway, because I have put my rates on a bunch of people's rigs and they're like, oh my god, this is cool, because I run the center very, very smooth, which gets rid of that notch in the springs as one spring unloads and the other one starts to load up on the transmitter. So yeah, I probably will, but yeah, I think I think more education about rates is what we need. I think more people need to talk about rates more often, so that we can understand, so that people that don't understand them can, right? I think that would be a better kind of setup, because yeah, I don't, in the same way that I don't like the idea of sharing my PIDs and having people blow stuff up, I also don't like the idea of sharing my rates and having people running rates that don't suit them. As an example of that, you know, you run my rates and every time you do, oh, look what I can use now to, as my little hold a frame up to illustrate things for you guys. This is version 0.1 of the CiottiFPV 3-inch frame, designed by Ryan Harrell. It's going to be a long time before these actually come out, but because I need to test it and make sure it's good. But yeah, I have 2 of these now. So as an example, somebody puts my rates on, they're like, oh, I love them, they feel great. But every single time they do a full roll, they over-rotate. And they over-rotate. And they over-rotate. Those rates, like, yes, you can beat into your head to not hold the stick over as long, right? Yes, you can absolutely do that. Or you can change the rates, and you can set the rates exactly. So, like, for whatever reason, in our brains, we have, like, a pacing to how we move the sticks. Everybody has, like, a little bit of a pacing to what they think a full flips and rolls are just one example of this, but they're a perfect example of this, and it's easy to see it. So, yeah, everybody has, like, sort of a pacing. Stick over, you know, 1/1000, 1/1000, 1/1000, 1/1000. Right, so 0.6 of a second, let's say, right? You can set your rates for that to be a perfect flip. If you do, you know, I'm sorry, roll. If you do full rolls all the time, that's pretty important to you. Rates are way deeper than that. Like that is a very easy way to kind of get started on it, but 99% of people don't even know about that. So that's what we need to be like that. Yeah, that's what needs to become more common knowledge. All that being said, where I will absolutely agree with you, Rob, is that during this process of learning, of figuring out what the hell rates are, like, especially if you've already watched Joshua explain them and you've listened to me explain them and, you know, maybe somebody else, if you're still not totally understanding it, dumping somebody else's rates on your stuff might help. That might help. It probably will help. Although it might be even more confusing, because when you dump all the rates on, you change the center, the middle, and the end sensitivity all at once, and that's usually too much. When you're trying to figure rates out, you want to make one change at a time. So change your pitch, center sensitivity, And then you can compare the center sensitivity on pitch to roll. And you can be like, oh my God, okay, so when I turn that number down, it makes it less sensitive. Center sensitivity is easy. Expo is a lot harder. Expo is a lot harder to dial in because on both sides, so Expo is the middle of the stick travel, and it blends on either side. So Expo is much harder to understand and really like drive into your head how it affects the way that your rig moves in between motions and in between different axes. So yeah, Expo is really, really, really hard to get dialed in perfect. And there is a chance that, yeah. 661 says, next time on CiottiFPV Live, finishing the TP3. Rob Axelson says, I was looking at a 5.8 liter roller cam motor for my 65 Mustang, then I saw the new Orca goggles. Decisions. The Orca goggles better not be that expensive. Good Lord. Rob says, tires smoking if you got them. Bob Noxious says, what's up, Collective and CiottiFPV using that title on finishing the Toothpick as clickbait? Pretty much. Akash Jana says, is it worth it to build Toothpick quads considering that they cost more to just buy parts and build than just buy a bind and fly? In my opinion, yes, because, I mean, this is the classic build or buy. For your first rig, you can definitely make the case to build a bind and fly. I did. My thinking was, if I buy it built, I can take pictures of it, and then I'll know where all the wires go. Because this was back in the days of individual ESCs, so there were a lot of wires. Nowadays, it's not quite so confusing, but you can absolutely, I think there's still a lot of value in buying a rig that will fly, flying it to see if you like this hobby, and then you go down the rabbit hole. The worry is if your first rig is a pile of parts that are legitimately difficult to put together, and it's very easy to buy the wrong parts, you might get out of the hobby before you get into it. Or it'll weed the people that aren't stubborn enough out quicker. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you have to be stubborn as shit to stay in this hobby. So, I don't know. I think it's a better bet to get somebody up in the air as quickly as possible, because the quicker they fall in love with this, the quicker they're going to work on being stubborn enough to stay in it. But as soon as you start breaking stuff and as soon as you really get into it, I think there's an awful lot of value into building your own rig so that you can choose the correct frame for you as a pilot, the correct motors, the correct props, the correct everything. That's one of the amazing things about this hobby, is being able to build rigs that perfectly suit your flying style, what you're doing with your footage, your budget, right? All these things. Really good question, Akash. Frilo just says, I'm actually thinking about a Grom or a Ruckus, small and fun. I've heard good things about both of those. Tom says, you're absolutely right. I had a 911 very scary with the momentum coming in milliseconds. Sounds like Tom's almost hit himself. Yeah, it is wild to... No, talking about cars again. Absolutely right. Yeah. 911s are great cars, don't get me wrong. I just don't like driving them. At the limit. For a daily, for like to drive it at like 7/10, gorgeous. Great exhaust note, very well built, very interesting suspension dynamics. But yeah, I as often as I can, I try to drive at this like amazing limit of traction that cars have, where some of them really come alive. Some of them become very scary, like Corvettes and Vipers. I used to always stay the hell away from them when I was instructing, which was also because the owners of those cars tend to have gigantic egos, and that is a very bad thing at a track day. They tend to have huge egos and zero talent. And from the passenger seat, that is a terrible combination. But I digress. Mr. Huggy says Powell's working on ways to do auto-tune for quads. Yeah, I mean they'll figure it out while I'm a half an hour behind. I'm going to absolutely rip through this. We already talked about AI tuning, so let's go. Did I just see Slat's logo? I did. What's up, Slat? I don't know if you're still in here, but Slat says I went the route of not tuning it out and just capping my throttle before it affects the bent prop wash. What were we talking? Were we talking about flying a stock tune back then? I think. Capping my throttle. Well, so Slat flies KISS. So KISS is a lot different. There's a lot of limitations on KISS over Betaflight. So if Slat's talking about capping his throttle, the only way to do that in KISS is a throttle limit, which is not going to affect the PIDs. So yeah. And KISS has a much harder time with prop wash than Betaflight does because the filtering is nowhere near as good. Interesting. It's an interesting way to get around that. I only spent a couple months with KISS, so maybe there's some magic in there that I don't know about. But Chris Croft says you're never going to get the TP3 finished. You keep asking questions. That's true, but you know, my value is answering questions. You know, you guys don't come here to watch me build another rig, so I always, prioritize answering questions over getting another build done. That's just going to get smashed into the ground. Ian Stematic says thanks for the info. What about going 4S motor size 2004? So, Ian, one of the things that I do is build planning sessions, one-on-one build planning sessions. The first thing I do in those sessions is ask you a dozen or so questions. What frame? What's the payload? What camera? Who's your favorite pilot? Which pilot do you want to fly like? What are you going to do with your footage? Whole bunch of different questions. All of those questions I need in order to actually give you a real motor recommendation. I don't do the thing that most people do, which is, oh, you're building a 4S 3-inch rig, you should get this motor. Without the rest of that info, that's kind of a reckless way to answer that question, because if you're trying to build a 4S 3-inch cinematic rig versus a basher freestyle rig, there's just, yeah, it's just you can't give that answer. We were talking about this a little bit ago. So yeah, I need to know a lot about that. If you want to do a one-on-one session with me, I would love to. If you want to leave all that info in the chat here, I'll do my best to answer it for sure. Freelojo says, what's going on with USB cables? Or one of the ways to get a little bit more of my attention, admittedly, is to message me on Patreon, is to join my Patreon and message me on Patreon. It's $3 whole a month, but you know, those folks are literally supporting me to be able to do this and keep the lights on in this apartment. So yeah, I tend to prioritize my Patreon messages over any other messages. So that's another way you can get a little bit more one-on-one support from me. I've yet to have to I've yet to have anybody take advantage of it and ask me enough questions that I'm like, hey, like on Instagram, you can message me on Instagram and ask me questions and I'll answer them for you. There is a point, if you ask me 10 questions a day every day, there is a point where I'll be like, I love giving you all this free knowledge that's cost me thousands of dollars to learn, but do you mind like joining my Patreon? I've yet to have to do that, but I hope I never have to do that. But so yeah, if you want to nip that in the bud. If you join my Patreon, I will prioritize your messaging and be more than happy to talk to you over there in that messenger. Again, not that I don't answer every question that comes in, regardless of where it comes from, but I prioritize Patreon. Freelojo says, what's going on with USB cables? I've been through several myself lately, thought it was just me. My problem is that I save every USB cable that I get with every single thing I ever buy. And if you're making an Insta360 Go 2, you're probably going to cheap out on the USB cable to try to put all your money into the camera, right? So that's what I assume my problem is that I'm using... Although you could probably say that about all cables. I feel like cables are just awful nowadays. You know, like iPhone cables are the perfect example of this. Like, if you don't buy an Apple iPhone cable, it's gonna break. It's not it's not when, it's just a matter of when, I should say. And the Apple cables, which are really expensive, which, yes, is part because Apple's a big fancy company that pays its employees well, but some of that money is going into it being a better quality cable. Do yourself a favor. When you buy your next Apple cable, if you want it to not, because they will break eventually, shrink wrap the area that always breaks. You ever notice Apple cables always break here? If you put shrink wrap on this little area, it'll never break there. So do it, and do it on both ends. And then your hideously expensive Apple cables that work really well will also last a long time. I mean, they do last a long time, but they eventually let go. And they almost always let go in that one little spot there, unless animals chew through them. 661 says, people are still saying to calibrate ESCs in Facebook. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, do yourself a favor, guys. Don't listen to any advice that you get on a Facebook group without vetting the person, right? Like, click on their profile, start scrolling down on their profile, make sure that there's FPV pictures, you know, from like a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe hopefully 3 years ago. Be really careful about that, because it's just... And you're going to waste your money and you're going to waste your time, and that's don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do it. Listen to those of us that have spent the time and effort to, actually know what we're talking about. And you'll know it. Like typically people that know what they're talking about, you'll know it. You'll know it. Freelojo says, I'm going to have to see this sea of misinformation. He also says, I agree with you about rates because everyone responds at a different rate. LOL. Yeah, it's true. Den636 says, will that frame come in a 3.5-inch option? Probably. Yeah, for sure. I'll do 4-inch arms, 3.5-inch arms, 3-inch arms, 2.5-inch arms, maybe even 2-inch arms. Because it's not going to be a mass-produced frame, right? Only you guys are going to buy this frame, realistically. And it's a simple change for Ryan to make to the design files. And when frames get cut, they get cut on a huge sheet of carbon, so it doesn't matter. You could put 100 different arm designs in there and just get a couple of each. And yeah, the market for this is you guys, and you guys are the ones that are going to give a shit about a 2-inch arm versus a 2.5-inch arm, because you guys want to build something that flies absolutely as good as possible. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. So yeah, and realistically, I'm making this frame for me. If you're here, you're gonna love it, because for you to spend hours of your life with me, you're pretty fucking eye to eye with me, right? So it's cool. I can make this frame completely for me, and then you guys will more than likely love it. That being said, there are things that I absolutely will not do on this frame, such as make a version of it with dual 20x20 mounting, because that will make this too heavy. So there are things that I will not compromise on, and that I will base, what I'm doing is I'm basically forcing you guys to build it the way that it should be built. I know that you want to build it with a Vista in it, but don't. Build it with and technically you could still build it with a Vista in it, because it does have a central 20x20. So if you want to build it with a Vista, you're going to have to put the Vista below your stack and then the rest of your stack up on top of it, and you're going to have to run like 35mm standoffs. If you want to do that, that's on you. But Vistas in micros do not really work. It doesn't give you it doesn't give you video quality that's quite good enough. If you're going to put a Vista into this, here's what it is. If you're going to put a Vista into this, you are flying for the enjoyment of flying. You are not flying for crispy, beautiful HD footage. The Vista does not give you crispy, beautiful HD footage. It gives you kind of okay HD footage. So, to build this with a Vista, you're going to have really tall standoffs, and that's going to affect the flight performance a little bit. But you're flying for your enjoyment of flying. If you want to build this to perform really well, you're not going to put a Vista in it. 3-inch props are too small for a 20-gram VTX to be involved in the build. I'm also not going to build this to take an AIO, because AIOs are awful. If you really want to put an AIO into one of these, you can get a 20x20 AIO, and you can have an awful, fragile thing that blows up all the time. I am pushing you guys to build this the way that 3-inch rigs fly amazing, which is analog, 20x20 stack, run cam hybrid. That's what this is. If you do that build, you will love this. If you stray away from that formula, you will love that 3-inch rig less. I promise you, because I've done it. I've tried to build 3-inch rigs at all different weights with all different components, and I've distilled that all down into this. Motor protection on the arms, removable arms, carbon fiber going the right direction, intelligently designed cutouts, weight removed from the areas where it doesn't accomplish anything, added to the areas where it does, stuff like that. So, yeah, this should be good. We'll see. We'll see. I gotta bash the living hell out of it to really dial that in. And now that I really think about it, I might actually not do 4-inch arms, because this is not a long-range frame, but it would be a really good long-range frame, because yeah. So I will do 4-inch arms. I will not do 5-inch arms, though. That's just silly. But yeah, this would be a good long-range frame because it's light, and because it forces you to use 20x20 components, which are the right ones to use. They're the most durable. They're the most reliable, and they're the right balance of lightness and reliability. So I actually will do 4-inch arms for it, because yeah, this would be one hell of a long-range rig. I ain't gonna build one as long-range, but I know one of you guys will. Brandon's Baked Bean says, I tried Quick Flash's rates once when he suggested I try them, and I nearly vomited. Had a headache for the first hour, couldn't fly in the goggles for the rest of the day. Jesus, Brandon actually got a headache. Yeah, rates, using somebody else's rates is typically kind of useless. He also says, I have freestyle rates and long-range rates that I also use for cinematic. Freeloader says, shaky finger club over here. Yep. Demenis. I don't really have shaky fingers, but I have impossible standards. So like any little bit of like jitter in the HD footage, and I'm like, it's the worst. Delete it. No, Demenis says, I tried a bunch of rates in Sims, and now I'm trying one in real life. It feels pretty good, but not the same as in the Sim. Yeah, the Sims will get you in the ballpark, but you got to get it. Yeah, there is definitely, yeah. Kevin Sumner says, one thing I do to feel rate differences is putting them in rate profiles and switching them on the same quad, sometimes in the same batteries with the OSD menu. Yeah, it's a great idea, Kevin. Also on the Whoop Wednesday stream a couple days ago, on Freestyle Friday stream, rather, I showed you guys, we tuned the 2S 75 millimeter Tiny Whoop, and what I did is I used 3 different PID profiles, where I moved the PIDs up by 20 points in each one. Same kind of approach. Use those PID profiles. PID profile 1, 2, 3, rate profile 1, 2, 3. Use that. It's an incredibly handy tool. You just quick go into the menu, and it's important, right? Like the differences between rates and PIDs are subtle. So if you get up in the air and you flop it all around, okay, all right, cool, all right, I'm dialed in, and then you land and you go. The menu, menu, profile, all right, PIDs, okay, all right, so P gain on pitch, okay, and D gain, okay, D gain, right, like 5 minutes is gonna go by, and that, like, what you were just feeling up in the air, that shit's gone. Now you're thinking about numbers and rates and all this shit. Versus, all right, I'm dialed in, land it, menu, profile, over, PID profile 1, PID profile 2, save and exit, back up in the air. That's how you feel a difference between subtle stuff. And you probably still won't feel a difference, but placebo will tell you that you are. Keep that shit in mind. Placebo is a big thing. If there's any chance that you think you don't feel a difference, you ain't feeling a difference. Always, always, always keep that in mind. There is so much placebo in this hobby, and I guess it's not that there's so much placebo in this hobby, it's just that the differences, the changes that we make are very subtle. So absolutely, always, always, always keep that in mind. Martin Wynn says, nice to see you. 0.2 months, top tier patron. Hopefully a more consistent year financially for everyone. Martin, I have you on thanks for the incredible generosity, Martin, is what I'm basically trying to say. Much, much appreciated, man. And yeah, I agree. Hopefully this year is a little more consistent than last. Akash says, I try to increase my throttle control by setting my hover point at throttle percent at which it hovers, then use 0.55. Usually gets me good low throttle control, but poor feel on other parts. I try to increase my throttle control by setting my hover point at throttle percentage at which it hovers. Akash, are you talking about Throttle Expo? I feel like you might be talking about Throttle Expo. I've been using Throttle Expo on pretty much everything for a while now. Throttle Expo is actually really, really nice to just, it doesn't have to be big. You can just do like 0.1 or 0.2 in there, and it's pretty subtle, but it does make a pretty big difference. The proper way, in my opinion, to set the Throttle Expo is to go into your OSD and add your throttle percentage into your OSD menu. So now in your OSD, with your eyeballs, you can see the entire time you're flying the exact number, 0 to 100, that your throttle is at, right? So then you go out to your favorite spots and you cruise around. I mean, the best way to do it is to go fly normally, DVR everything, bring the DVR home, watch the DVR, and just stare at that throttle percentage. And you're looking for an average. What you want is to figure out the percentage of throttle that you spend the majority of your time at. You typically don't hover a lot, so setting the center point of your Throttle Expo at your hover throttle, that's typically going to be a little bit too low, because when you're flying for real, right, you typically don't hover. You're always nose down. What is The thing's happening with my hair again. I got it. There's like one hair hanging down. I can see it. Yeah, so when you go out and you fly, what I do is I just go and just do a couple like steady state cruises. The amount of up tilt and the amount of like rage that you have usually will have you like going like a certain speed with most of your rigs. Like usually you'll just have like a normal like cruising velocity that you tend to cruise at. So yeah, when I'm setting my throttle expo, I just put the throttle into my OSD, and then I just go out and I just kind of cruise around, and then so I get the rig into like a comfortable cruise, and I look down at I shift my eyes over and I look at the throttle percentage. Okay, 34%, great. And then I go fly around a little bit, and then I do another little cruise, and I glance over, and I fly around, and glance over. I just glance over at it as often as I can. Again, the best way to do it is with DVR, but I've been doing this for years, so I can kind of swing it with that. Typically, what you'll find is that your cruising throttle is somewhere around 30 to 40%, usually closer to 30. Depends on the rig, depends on the props, depends on the motors, depends on a lot of different things. But yeah, once you have that cruising average number, that's what you want to set for your throttle midpoint. And then the throttle expo is how violent the S-curve is going to be. Normally your throttle is perfectly linear. You move the stick halfway, you get 50% throttle. As you turn the expo number up, instead of it being a linear curve like this, it becomes an S. It becomes an S. And that center point of the S is what you're setting. So that at that center point, your throttle is a little bit less sensitive, so that'll cause you to bounce up and down less. Because if you move the throttle a little bit, you won't jump up. It'll just come up a little bit because it's softening that center point that you set. How much throttle expo you put in, totally up to you. Play around with that. Try 0.2, try 0.4, try 0.8. It'll be nuts. You'll definitely feel a difference. Bob Noxious says, I was so inspired by your indoor flying and freestyle, I took my Whoop to the shop and into the second battery, got some junk and broke the shaft off a motor. There you go. That's awesome, Bob. Man, I had a fucking blast flying on Friday, doing that battery testing. That was, yeah. Maggie's house, Studio 2 is a fun tiny Whoop spot. Really, really, really fun. The YouTube zipped me to the bottom. Hold on. I gotta scroll back up. Kevin Sumner says, misinformation on Facebook? No way, I don't believe it. I do my own research. Yeah. Need misinformation? Facebook is here for you. I'm not getting this toothpick done today. Ian Stematic says, I had a 911 also, snaps on limit and corners. I never found 911s to have snap oversteer. Snap oversteer is an S2000 thing. Snap oversteer is a poor rear, not necessarily poor rear suspension geometry, but binding rear suspension geometry makes snap oversteer happen. The rear suspension on 911s is actually pretty phenomenal. So they don't necessarily snap oversteer, they just have a lot of momentum when they do oversteer. That's what you're feeling, Ian. That's pretty high level stuff though, admittedly. But yeah, snap oversteer is from rear suspension that basically as the rear suspension loads up, it's been shittily designed, so the rubber bushings will bind, and they'll bind up, and then once you've loaded it up enough, they'll release, and the rear suspension geometry will change all of a sudden. S2000s are notorious for this, and that's it's the snap that you get. 911s are not like that. The rear suspension geometry is really nice on them. They don't bind up. The rear suspension geometry has to be good on a 911 because the engine is in the worst possible place you can put it. Jackalope FPV with a $5 super chat. He says, lots of good information today. Appreciate you. DJI Fund. Thank you very much, Jackalope. Let's get it added in there. Gear Fun. 45 goes to 50. Thank you, brother. There we have it. The reason that the DJI and HD0 digital fund is $1,000 is because for me to switch over, it's got to get switched on a lot of rigs. Multiple cinematic rigs, multiple freestyle rigs. And yeah, digital is expensive. So I did the math the one day, and it's a little over $1,000 if I was going to switch to digital. For me, with having rigs that I'm doing actual work with, I can't have a couple of rigs on analog, a couple of rigs on DJI. There's a big difference in latency. There's a big adjustment time. One of the worst things that you can do for your flying is to have different rigs on different setups, different latency, different everything. You really need to have all your stuff as unified as possible for you to really get good as a pilot. And the better you get as a pilot, the more that becomes an issue. So yeah, I can't have it half done. So if I'm gonna switch, it has to all happen at once. All that being said, I do have one rig that's the test bed 5-inch rig that will be put onto, and I'm gonna have a 3-inch rig that's the same thing. I'm gonna build an HD0 Rip Squeak in the future here, and yeah. So I'll just have that one. But gotta test. Mr. Huggy says, come back next week. See, I might have started off this build by then. I might just knock this build out like off the stream, like tomorrow morning when I wake up or something. Michael Blades says CiottiFPV is the best. Thank you, brother. Kevin Sumner says misinformation. Oh no, we got that. Demenis says nope, everyone is gonna buy it. Bob Noxious says I'll certainly buy some frames. You guys are the best. Freelogia says I want that 3-inch frame. I think what I'm gonna do is actually move a Rip Squeak over into it. I'm not gonna do a fresh build. I have 2 of them. We can weigh them. I brought them home specifically so that I can weigh them. Ooh, this scale's probably broken now. There are 2 different base plate designs that Ryan made, and there are also 2 different arm designs. One arm is 4-hole, and the other arm is 3-hole. That's what she said. I built this one to be the lightweight configuration. There's also different base plate setups on these. This one basically doesn't have an X plate. So this is the lightweight setup with the lightweight arms, 38 grams. And this is the heavier weight setup with the 4-hole arms, 42.8 grams. So the goal was to get these down to 30 grams. Ryan had a really hard time doing that because of the devil horn arms and because I wanted the arms to lock up really firmly. Now that I've spent some quality time with Rip Squeaks that are at 250 and 260 and 270 and 280 grams, I'm actually really happy with the weight. I'm really happy that these are closer to 40 grams than they are to 30 grams because I want the base plate to be absolutely indestructible. I don't want you to ever have to replace a base plate because that is the biggest pain in the ass ever. I want the top plate to also be very durable. It's a lot easier to replace, but there's the potential that when the top plate breaks, it can blow up your electronics, and I don't want that. The arms, the reason that this isn't going to come out for a while is that I'm going to spend a bunch of time breaking these arms to figure out the exact... I want these arms to break before the motor, just like the Glide. And that's going to take a lot of crashes. So yeah, these are not going to be out soon. But when this does come out, this is basically going to be a 3-inch Glide, because it's going to have the arm strength very, very, very specifically dialed in. And with micros, that's even more important because micro motors are very weak. And replacing a little tiny carbon fiber arm is much easier and cheaper than replacing a micro motor. So these arms are probably going to thin out a little bit. I wanted Ryan to make the arms a little bit stronger at first, and then as I break motors, I can slim the arms down a little bit, and that'll bring the weight down as well. But yeah, the other thing that was, like I said though, the big thing that made this gain weight is the arm lockup. What you want to remember is your base plate is only ever like 3 millimeter thick carbon. Your top plate is only ever like 1.5 or 2 millimeter thick carbon. So they're nice and light. The arms are 3 millimeters or 4 millimeters. So the arms are heavy. So every little bit of extra, like the devil horns are made of thick carbon. So they're heavy. That's why a lot of manufacturers don't do these. So when you bring that in here and you want a really strong lockup, there's a bunch of weight. There's a whole bunch of weight in here because this lockup is so firm. But I would rather have that. A, it's centralized weight, but B, it's weight being spent on something that's very important, which is the arm lockup. Wobbly arms are a really bad thing, and a lot of frames are plagued with wobbly arms. So yeah, that was a big thing that I was like, dude, like whatever we have to do for this arm lockup to be like just cemented, although cement's soft, marble. We're gonna call it the marble lockup because it's that solid. Noah Reinhardt says, sign me up for a 3.5 inch, please. Bob Noxa says, please do 4-inch arms for 4-inch freestyle pilots. Yep, I'll do them both for sure. Richard says, take my money. Everything you described is what I want. 3-inch props, analog, 20x20 run cam hybrid. The other thing that I need to dial in with Ryan is this cutout. I think this cutout for the camera is not big enough. I think I'm going to have problems fitting a run cam hybrid in here. This cutout is going to become much deeper. There's also a chance that these standoffs are too close together. I don't have a hybrid floating around, but yeah, so there's a bunch of things that do need to get dialed in on this, but yeah, should be good. I'm excited for that. Mr. Huggy says, here's a tip for rates. Try them out first and lift off for Velocidrone. It's great. It's such a great idea. Somebody mentioned that a little bit ago. But yeah, that's the simulators are you can also play around with tuning in the simulators, but that's not as valuable as playing around with rates. Akash says, is the Beta FPV ELRS 1 watt really needed for freestyle? I feel like I want to spend $10 less and still get the 500 milliwatt module with the trash case. For $10, yeah, I would get the 1 watt. 2.4 is good, but I hear lots and lots and lots of people complaining about fail-safes on 2.4. So I would absolutely get as much wattage as possible if I were going to go 2.4. Ispander says, I've learned to fly on Steel's rates in the sim. Those are stupid fast. Yeah, Steel's rates are funny because you put Steel's rates on your rig and it's like, oh, okay. Now it makes sense why, he flies like a thrashy skateboarder. And it's also a perfect example of, the rates are very individual. If you want to fly like a thrashy skateboarder, nutty rates are what you want. Kevin Sumner says, with the M1 coming online, are you going to get back and playing sim combat on Sundays? I absolutely am, Kevin. I'm really looking forward to that. Liftoff is actually already installed on the M1 Mac. Rob Axon says, any thoughts on the HD0 goggles? I have not looked at them at all. I'm assuming that you're talking about the Orca goggles. I have not seen HD0 specific goggles, but I've seen the new Orcas. Orca is a new company. Bot Grinder has had failures with their goggles. Joshua Bardwell has also had failures with their goggles. That scares the hell out of me. One of the things that I love about Fat Shark is they've been around for forever and their stuff is just bulletproof. I do not bring 2 sets of goggles with me to gigs. If I was to get a set of Orca goggles, I would need to start bringing 2 sets of goggles with me to gigs because Orca goggles are not a known quantity to be bulletproof, right? So, yeah, Orca's been around a little bit longer now, so they're learning, but nothing like Fat Shark. Fat Shark is, we're very lucky to have Fat Shark. They're a small company. They've been around a long time. They really care about reliability. We are very lucky to have them. Orca's doing some some really fancy stuff, but, you know, goggle failures that's the worst, right? I mean, I guess fail-safe is the worst, but a goggle failure basically, when you're up in the air, means you're disarming. You know, you're usually far enough away where you're not going to be able to rip the goggles off, spot it, try to figure out what tail in is, and fly it home. Gamma Gonad says, gonna have to change the name of the stream to for real this time. No, I'll just do this. Here, look, I'll just do this. I'll just go, where's it at? Where's the edit button? Let's say not finishing. Not finishing. But great questions. There we go. Because it's 4:55 already, and I'm doing questions from 4:30. Espander says you can put rate profiles on a switch. You can. I wish you could put PID profiles on a switch. I forgot about that, Espander. Yeah, good call. You can put rate profiles on the switch. It's in. You got to turn on expert mode. And then it's in, you'll find it. Turn on expert mode, and there's one of the new things that pops up in expert mode on the side, the tabs on the side. It's in there. If you want to know how to do it, just message me if you can't figure it out. CH3FPV says, with the 4-inch arms on your frame for long range with a naked GoPro, let's say it will work only with no wind, so not really a build to advise. What? With the 4-inch arms for long range, with a naked GoPro, let's say it will work only with no wind. I don't know what that means, CH3. But, so this with 4-inch arms is going to be very lightweight. If you're dealing with a windy day, that is going to make it blow away, and it's going to make it a little bit more susceptible to wind, but not by that much. I mean, long-range rigs tend to get heavy because you put a big-ass battery on them. So you're usually putting like 120, 150, 200-gram battery on there. So, you know, this frame is going to be roughly 10 to 20 grams lighter than other frames. Realistically, what you should do at that point is spend that extra weight on the battery. So I would actually argue that this would be better, but the problem is this is a small top plate, so you're not going to be able to fit a gigantic battery onto this. So yeah, I've yet to. Usually though, long range guys always go for the lightest possible frame. I've never heard of a long range pilot specifically going to a heavier frame for it to do better in the wind, because again, if they want extra weight, it needs to be in the battery. You know, long range is prioritizing battery and efficiency over everything. So other than the fact that this top plate is not going to allow you to put a gigantic battery on it, I think that's the reason that this doesn't necessarily work super well for a long range rig. But it'll go farther with the same battery because it'll be lighter weight. So, you know, I would argue, though, that the Squeak would be a better long-range build. And there are 4-inch arms for it, mainly because it's got a fatter top plate. It's probably not a long... Well, yeah, and it is longer. V2 Squeak is probably a really good... Although they made the top plate skinnier now. But, yeah. Look at the size difference. These are both 3-inch rigs. Hold on. Get this Toothpick out of here. Nobody wants to work on them. Look at the size difference. Although, no, the Toothpick is actually a 3.5-inch rig, to be fair. But, yeah. Pretty similar, actually. just a different, it's, I mean, obviously, very different angle in the arms. This frame with this angle in the arms is going to take energy in this direction a lot better, right? And that's what, that was, that is the only reason why I continued to move forward with this frame design even after I discovered the Squeak frames, because I get a lot of impacts in this direction, nose down, flying freestyle, hitting like poles and shit, or curbs. You know, I get a lot of impact that happens like this, where you're putting a bunch of energy like that, and when the energy comes in like this, when the arm is at this much of an angle, it's going to send that load up here, like this, right? The arm's not going to want to just snap like this. Usually the arm won't just snap like this because it's thickest in this direction, right? So you don't really see that failure much with the Squeak, but you know, this is also a more standard sort of frame geometry, and it allows you to lock all four arms together. I don't really know which one's better, but that was the reason that I kept going with this. I almost didn't. I almost bailed on this frame design once I found the Squeak because it's such a good frame. And I'm totally happy with the Squeaks. But I think there are potentially some advantages to this frame. Maybe not, but we're splitting hairs for sure. Bob Noxious, we got that. Okay, now I'm caught up to where I was 10 minutes ago. The other way to set throttle expo is by feel. You can feel it. With the throttle expo set at like 0.2, you should be able to feel that. And if you have the center point of the throttle expo wrong, you'll definitely feel it, because it makes the situation worse. The center point of the S feels really good. But then if you're off the center point, it's worse than linear, right? Because there's no free lunches. Where are we at here? YouTube, scroll me to the bottom. I'm scrolling back up here. Come on. Oh my God, I'm so far behind. Holy hell. All right, for real this time. I got to go fast through these. Let me get a drink. Okay. Where were we? There we go. Brandon's Bean says the DJI setting the center throttle for Expo is hard. I use black box since the OSD element doesn't work on DJI. Oh my God. Right. Yeah, that's gonna be annoying. Well, I mean, I'm fine because I already know those numbers, but yeah, that's. Oh my God, that's gonna drive me nuts losing some of those OSD elements on DJI. Quasimoto says I'll buy 2 of your frames now. I'm so excited. I run 3 15mm glides. I'm with you all the way. I appreciate that, Quasimoto. Again, though, just so you guys know, like you're gonna be waiting months for real, like guaranteed. Realistically, summer. This summer, I'll be very happy if I can have this available for anybody to buy by this summer. All right, like. I'm not just going to put this out. I'm going to smash the balls out of this thing before it actually comes out. If somebody is desperate to like prototype test it with me, yeah. I can figure that out. I can... What I'll do is I'll get the design files from Ryan and I'll send them to CNC Madness up in Toronto, I want to say. And their carbon fiber is not great quality, but that's kind of better for the testing phase, because during the testing phase, the big thing is to see where the arms break. Do they break here? Do they break here? Do they break out here? So the shittier the carbon, the easier it is to break them. And get a bunch of breaks done, right? So yeah, if you're desperate for one of these frames and you want to get, I have to fix this camera cut out for sure. That gets fixed before anything happens. Not fixed, but just adjusted. But that'll be easy. So yeah, if like you're desperate to get in on one, it ain't gonna be free. You're gonna have to. I'm gonna figure out what that's gonna cost, and I'll break it down by how many frames are on the sheet or whatever. And yeah, it's not going to be perfect, but if you're desperate to get in, you want to jump in on the prototype testing, let me know. And if there's a few of you that want to do that, we'll make it happen. For the record, I don't recommend that. Prototype testing a frame is very expensive. You're going to break shitloads of motors. You're going to break everything. It is very expensive to prototype test a frame. So I don't recommend that you get in on that. Fair, you've been warned. You're going to break tons of props, tons of motors, potentially ESCs, potentially flight controllers, probably cameras. That's the whole point. And I can't cover any of that. Christ, I can't even cover the cost of the frame. You got to pay for the frame too. But it is kind of fun to prototype test because, you know, your feedback gets used in like an actual product. And if you prototype test it with me, I'll probably give you one of the production frames for free as a thank you. But again, I don't recommend it. You're going to pay a lot of money in broken shit. Remy Tim says, I feel like now is the perfect time to wait on digital. I agree. 2 new digital goggles have just been announced. It's hard to know who's really going to come out on top. This whole digital war. Yeah, I mean, I've felt that way. I mean, that's been one of the ways that I've felt for a while now. But especially, yeah, absolutely. Daniel is dead on the money there. Kevin Sumner says, are you going to get batches of your frames cut up front, or you're going to do like Rosser does and have them cut to order through someplace like CNC Drones? I'll get a whole bunch. At some point, I'll get a whole bunch made all at once. Once it's locked in. Once it's dialed in, I'll get a bunch made. Freelo just says, I like the heavy frame, but I want 3-hole arms. Well, I've got you covered. 3-hole arms are here. That's one of the big things that I want to durability test is 3-hole arms versus 4-hole arms. There is not much of a weight difference, and I've talked to a couple of really smart people that say that 4-hole arms are the way to go. I'm not going to dive into the theory behind that or the experiences that these people have had behind that because that's like a half-an-hour conversation, but the people that I've talked to about it know what they're talking about. So I will probably go away from the 3-hole thing, but we'll see. We'll see. Really quickly, here's the here's the philosophy, right? We're always worried about a 4-hole arm breaking on the bottom, right? Breaking right there. It's like, oh yeah, look, there's a little straight line that can be formed. Well, the 3-hole arm does the same exact thing, but it's still got areas that it can draw a straight line, and having the motor base on that 4th hole does apparently provide some extra strength. So yeah, there's a chance that we'll see. Ruby Sim says, what? I thought you'd given up on finishing your frame. Now I'm excited. I kind of did, Dan, to be honest. Ryan just got really busy, and we kept missing each other, and I was kind of like, to hell with it. But yeah, he got caught up at the end of the year. Euro says, is that your frame? It is. Scroll. Mr. Huggy says, HG0 are going to make their own goggles. Wow. Okay. Wow. Everybody's spreading themselves kind of thin. I don't know. Kevin Sumner says, HG0 also announced goggles this week. Separate from the Orcas, HG0s look better on paper. In my opinion, they're still, they have announcement. Look better on paper, in my opinion. They still have an announcement on the Discord page. Got it. Feeler just says, trying to find a good mix between your flight style and Bardwell. That's pretty cool. That's a pretty interesting. Yeah. I like that. I'm down with that. Remy Tim says, as someone who has had Fat Shark's Fat shark failure multiple times. I can confirm that goggle failure is the worst case scenario. At least a failsafe can be avoided. Goggle failure is unpredictable. Oh yeah, that's why. It's funny when I said out loud 20 minutes ago, goggle failure is the worst thing ever. I bet you that's why. I bet you that's where my brain was at. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, oh no, that's so true. Yeah, goggle failing is, I mean, I guess at that point you can say that about anything, because a failsafe could be the Crossfire Nano shitting the bed, but we just don't see that happen. Goggles have a lot going on in them, right? They've got screen, they've got boards all over the place, they get hot, there's a fan, there's all kinds of shit going on. So, but yeah, it's so true. Goggles will just go out. It's not like, oh, I'm really pushing the range and my goggles fail. Like, no. Goggles let go like at 2:31 and 43 seconds on a Wednesday. It's just at complete random. Euro FPV says, will it fit a Vista or is it going to be only analog? It will fit a Vista, but you're going to have a hell of a tall stack. We talked about that a little bit ago, Euro. It is a single 20x20 mount only. So if you're going to put a Vista in it, you're going to have to put the Vista and then your ESC and your flight controller on the top. You're going to have like 30, 35 millimeter tall standoffs. It'll fly like that. Those are people that are flying for their own enjoyment, and that's fine. But I'm not going to like encourage that build style because, in my opinion, digital is too heavy for micros. Micros are very sensitive to weight, and the digital VTXs are just too heavy. We're going to get... I think HD0 is a much better solution for a digital micro, and we're going to get to see that on a Ripsqueak at some point here with the 20x20 wide. But that's only a 200 milliwatt VTX, which you could make a point. I mean, micros, you typically stay close to yourself, so... Yeah. But, I don't know, we'll see. Martin Wynn says, I finally got up in the air with my first 5-inch that works, NAS Evoke, using 4S even though it's a 6S. It's a really good idea. Is this okay to get used to it? I have 6S, but this thing is fast for me. Martin, it's a great idea. 4S batteries are cheaper, they're easier to get, and the less thrust that you have when you're trying to learn, the better. You can also use your 6S batteries. You're just going to go into the Betaflight PID tab, and you're going to put a throttle limit on them. Let me show you how to do this real quick, because it's a great question, and there is a very, very simple solution to you having both of those. And yeah, you're going to love it. Let's plug this in. Come on. There we go. All right. So here's what you're going to do. I'm going to go through this fast because this is being recorded, so you can go back and watch it over and over and over again. All right. You're going to stop it. You're going to go to and you're going to go to the PID tuning tab. What? Where the hell is it? What? Oh, this is on Betaflight 4.1. Hopefully you're on Betaflight 4.2. I have not flashed this Toothpick AIO yet. Here we go. Wait, no, right here. What am I doing? All right. Hopefully you're on Betaflight 4.2 or 4.3. If you're not, this ain't gonna work. There's plenty of videos on how to update, but I don't know. Maybe don't. Just keep flying for us. It's up to you. But here it is. Motor output limit, scale factor. Stop it. Scale factor and cell count. So you can either come in here. So 4S to 6S, it's roughly, it is 1.5 times more voltage. So the safest thing to do is to so what this does, this scales down the amount of power that the rig is going to use from the battery. So on 4S, you basically want this at 100%. If you then put 6S on there, if you want the same amount of thrust, you can do the math, or you can just put it 70. 70 is really close. So you can put this scale factor to 70 and just hit save. And then when you put the 6S battery on there, it'll fly just like it did with the 4S battery on there. The problem with doing it like this is you then put the 4S battery on there and it's going to have 70% of that 4S power. So it's going to be really underpowered. So then you got to come in here and go back up to 100 and save it, and that's just annoying. Betaflight's got your back. These are individualized to these 3 PID profiles. What might happen, though, what you might notice, is if you go from profile 1 to profile 2, these PIDs might change. See how they all changed? If the company has a custom PID tune on that rig, it'll be on profile 1. So all you need to do is put it on profile 1, take a screenshot of everything, take a screenshot of all this stuff, and then go to profile 2, look at your screenshot, and just match it all up. Just match everything up. Match all these numbers, match all these numbers, match all these numbers, everything but the scale factor. So then what you're going to do is your PID profile 1, let's say, you just pick. Let's say you want to make that your 6 cell. Betaflight can tell how many cells the battery is that's plugged in. So by putting this at 6, when you plug in a 6 cell battery, Betaflight is going to detect that it's a 6S battery, and it's going to pick PID profile 1. You're going to save that. I'm just going to zero it out. You're going to save that on 6 cell, and then you're going to put your 6 cell scale factor down to 70% or 75 or 80, whatever you want. You can move that around and play with how much power you want. So now you've got your PID profile 1, which is automatically set to trigger when a 6 cell battery is plugged in with a scale factor of 70. Then you're going to, let me just set this back the way that it was. Then you're going to come down to PID profile 2. You probably already know where I'm going with this, but you're going to come down to PID profile 2. You've already matched up your PIDs and all these settings and whatnot. You're going to come down here to the cell count, and this is going to be your 4 cell PID profile. And you're going to leave your scale factor at 100. So when you plug in a 4S battery, it's going to trigger this, and it's going to automatically go to PID profile number 2. For those of us that are more advanced, we would want to give a little bit more PID gains for 4S, right? Because it's a little bit more laggy, a little bit less crispy, and away we go. So there's if your rig is on 4.2, it's definitely not on 4.3. But if it's on 4.2, you have this motor output limiting here, and it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. And that way you can just not even think about it. Once you have this set up, you plug in a 6S, it brings the scaling down. You plug in a 4S, it runs it at 100%. All is well. All is right with the world. Yo. Good questions today, friends. My God. S-Gray says, I've built lightweight and heavier 7-inch frames. I'll say the heavier 7-inch is way more stable and easier to fly in the wind. Less vibrations in the footage, too. Interesting. So less vibrations in the footage, that's not weight related. That's frame strength related, more than likely. The heavier frame is probably stronger. You can build lighter weight frames that are strong. The AOS 7, for example, that is a fairly lightweight frame that's probably stronger than any of the other ones out there. Yeah, and like the main point that I was making about frame weight, it's always made sense to me that the long range guys prefer the lighter weight frames because they're pinching grams, right? And if you can take 20 grams off of the frame, you can put that into the battery. And that's, you know, from what I've seen. And I don't hang out in the long range Facebook group or with many long range people other than Remy Tim. So I'm not super educated on long range. I could be dead ass wrong. But in my mind, yeah. If you can to me, the key is to find the lightest weight frame that's strong enough for whatever you're doing. Maybe that's HD footage, maybe that's not. And then put all the weight into the battery that you possibly can. And motors, but mainly battery. Richard says, is your frame True X? You know, I don't remember. I don't remember. I doubt it, though. I'll tell you in 1 second. I really doubt it. So it looks like front to rear is roughly 9 centimeters. Oh, not even close. Left to right is 10.5. So yeah, it is definitely a squished X. With micros, my sort of build philosophy is onboard run cam hybrid. The problem becomes props in view. So a squished X frame is going to have less props in view. So I prioritized less props in view for a little bit worse flight characteristics. But on a build like this that doesn't have a big heavy GoPro in the front on the pitch axis, this being squished X is much more acceptable. Make sense? Like on a build like this with the RunCam hybrid on board, there is a lot less weight spread on the pitch axis. So the squished X is a lot less of a detriment to a micro versus a 5-inch freestyle rig with an 80 or 120, 130 gram camera all the way up front on the pitch axis that you need to try to control. So this being a squished X is not much of a performance hit, if any, to be really honest. Yeah, it is some. It is some. Them physics are them physics. Jesus, am I gonna have to end this stream before getting caught up on chat? I've never done that before. Oh my god, I am so behind. Richard Freelojo says, the more I see that frame, the better and more durable it is looking. Yeah, I'm more excited about it than I thought I'd be. Kevin Sumner says, HDU0 has full canvas mode. Yeah, I'm excited about that. Richard says, is there going to be props in view in your frame? Definitely, but as little as possible. There's just no way to get them out. Yeah, having the camera on board, even the Insta3. So the Rip Squeak is pretty good. When you're talking about frames in view, the important thing is the front. Where's the front of the camera in relation to the motor shaft? That's what it's kind of all about. So when you look at this, it's damn near even. I mean, the camera is back a little bit, but yeah, there's not much of a distance there. When you look at this, there is actually a little bit more of a difference in the center line of the motor to the front of the frame. Not much. It's actually pretty close. It's hard to tell without motors and props on this, but yeah, they're pretty similar. They're pretty similar. But the long and short of it is, even with an Insta360 Go up here, there's still a little bit of props in view. It's pretty unavoidable. The GoPros all sit up a little bit higher than this, and that's what gets the props out of view. If you run an Insta360 Go mount that's vertical, you don't have props in view because you move the camera lens up. But anytime your lenses are down low in the frame, there's always going to be prop in view. Luckily, we have some pretty good prop options that are gray, and gray props pretty much disappear for the most part. But yeah, no matter what, there is going to be a little bit of prop in view unless you get the camera lens up really high. And the problem that we have with micros is we don't have any really durable cameras, right? We don't have a session that weighs 20 grams, so it's just nature of the beast kind of thing. But yeah, that's why I went squished X instead of True X. Noah says, I'll test it with you. I crashed 3 times during the stream. Deal, Noah. Let me hit me up. I'll yeah, like I said, if any of you guys want to get in on that, hit me up. Dan636 said, I'll be glad to test that frame for you. Bob Noxus says, I'm desperate to help. I know your time is valuable and willing to buy a prototype to do it. Remy Tim says, where do you ultimately plan to get your frame cut, if not CNC Madness? Whatever company that Rugi is using. I've already talked to him about it. When I talked to him about it, he was changing from one to the next, so I didn't even bother getting their info. But yeah, Bob has done a lot of research on, who's doing a good job cutting and who's using good quality laminated carbon. So whoever Bob's using, that's who I'll be using. I've personally had problems with CNC Madness, and I've heard from multiple people problems with them. They're not in China, is kind of the long and short of it. So they have employees that don't work for 5 cents an hour. So they have to pay their employees more, so they have less money to put into the manufacturing. And that's basically what I've heard from multiple people, and I've experienced as well. I've had frames cut from CNC, and they were not up to snuff with some of the other guys. But yeah, Bob has his finger on the pulse of carbon fiber cutters at the moment. So whoever he's using is who I'll use. Freelojo says, just message on Patreon about testing because I'm supposed to be durability testing using Zepto and Tramp Nano. Nice. Freelojo says split 3 nano for the camera. Okay, that'll actually fit totally fine in there. Should. I also don't have any TPU for this or anything like that, so we're all going to have to kind of figure that out. We'll get it done. We'll find some good prints on Thingiverse. Or one of you guys will probably just create something. Ramdongo says, press reset on 4.2 and it all disappeared on a 1S AAO. Did you recover your little 2S as I saw the error code in Reddit top? You talking about from Friday night, Ram, or just now? This AIO is factory default, so God knows what's going on with that. Yeah, I mean, I always recommend just resetting things up one by one, because eventually it's really nice. Eventually, when you've done enough Betaflight setups, it becomes really fast. You just have to like do it 10 or 15 or 20 times. So yeah, just go through it. It's nice to get good at it, though, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Martin Wynn says, that was an awesome bit of advice. Love you, man. Thanks, dude. Woo! Even my voice is going. We're answering so many good questions today. Ramdago says, so 6S rig using 4S equals novice and no adjustments needed. I mean, not specifically. I've done it before. I mean, Christ, my cinematic rig basically is that. It's basically I'm basically running a 4S motor limiting on a 6S rig, just because it's cinematic and I want the throttle to be really smooth. So not just for novices, but a novice is one of the perfect uses of buying a 6S rig and running 4S batteries on it. Novice and cinematic, I guess, would be the easiest way to kind of describe that. Although not always with cinematic stuff. Sometimes you do need the power, but you know what I mean. S-Grace says, but the weight also helps with those small gusts that could affect the footage and give vibrations because lighter setup has to work a lot more to even them out. But you make that weight up in the battery, S-Grace. And then, to be honest, the bigger battery is going to perform better, and that's going to allow the PID loop to eat up those, any little inconsistencies. So, and the lighter frame is going to have lighter arms, and the lighter arms are going to react quicker. So, actually, yeah, the lighter, if in dealing with, getting hit by the wind and like actual like flight performance things, the lighter frame will actually perform better because it'll let you do the bigger battery, which will let the PID loop respond a little bit quicker, and having less weight on the arms will respond quicker. If you're talking about like vibrations coming from the motors, it's about the frame strength. The weight doesn't necessarily add strength. Weight does help with vibrations because of mass damping, but what I'm saying is that the lighter frame, you should be using a heavier battery. If we're talking about a lighter frame and the same battery, you're absolutely right. But if you were going to go to a lighter frame, it would only make sense to go to the bigger battery, and that would fix the mass damping issue, and it would also give you a yeah. We just talked about it. GemFan Hobby is in the house. Dropping a link to my non-existent OnlyFans page. Euro FPV says, I'm doing an OG Ripsqueak build. Where can I buy one of those Go 2 mounts? Not available quite yet. Matt and I are still finishing a couple things about it. They will be available soon. He just got back from Dubai. So we're going to, maybe this week actually, I need to make a little video with him showing him a couple little things that, that we want to change on this. But it's coming soon. Coming very soon. I don't know if he's going to sell it. He has a Etsy store, or he might just throw it up on Thingiverse. If he sells it, you guys should buy it because he's a great guy. He's done a bunch of work on these. So let's hook a brother up. Ramdanko says, how is your hybrid cam view in the 3-inch Ripsqueak? It's really not bad. The props are there, but they're not distracting. It's not like the Remix. Like the Remix has a lot of prop in view. These 3-inch Ripsqueaks do not have a lot of prop in view. It's totally acceptable in my opinion. Holy shit! I'm caught up on the chat. I'll show you how much prop is in view, and that will be the end of our live stream. I think I've got some footage on this one. So this is what you're going to be seeing, right? In terms of props in view. This is how the RunCam Hybrid is mounted. Let's move over to the bench cam. This is how the Hybrid is mounted here, right? So you can see it's kind of peeking out the front a little bit, but it's still behind the motor line. When I bash into things with this, the camera doesn't hit. I only hit the camera when I send something up the middle, which is typically going to hit the camera anyway. But this is your approximation of where the lens of the camera sits in relation front to back with the motors. And then this is your representation of where, this is the HD lens up here. So it's ever so slightly above the prop line. As we talked about before, the higher this lens goes, the more the props go out of view. And so it's about this direction. It's also about front to back, right? The farther forward you put it, the less prop in view. Let me pull the memory card on this. I think I flew this around the other day. There should be some footage on here. Whether or not this computer is going to play it, God only knows. But we will see in a second. And yeah, this is what I will leave you guys with until tomorrow night at 10 o'clock. Again, come on now. Again, big old full build giveaway. It's not built. You're going to have to build it, but full build giveaway starting now, running until Whoop Wednesday. This Wednesday is when it ends. It is a full set of brand new Newbie Drone 1202s, Caddx Tarsier HD and FPV cam, FR Sky XM receiver, 2 of the frames, 2 of these frames, this really cool canopy that holds the Tarsier, VTX that goes in this canopy, Beta FPV F4 2-4S AIO 12 amp, and 2 of these Beta FPV 3S 300 mAh batteries. The way that you get in on this giveaway is a little different than my normal giveaways. This is like all the new YouTube channels. You gotta buy stuff in order to get entered. If you go to CiottiFPV.com, I have an Etsy store, I have a Fiverr page, and I have a Teespring store. For every $5 that you spend on any 3 of those, or if you want to book a Fiverr session and you don't want Fiverr to take the 14%, just message me and we'll book it. Every $5 you spend gets you on the wheel once for this build. So go buy yourself something nice, get entered to do this full build, and yeah. I'll mention it again tomorrow night. And then Wednesday is the time limit. I should probably run this for longer, but you only live once, beaches. Ain't nobody got time for that. If this goes well, then this is how I'm going to be doing a bunch of other giveaways. 2 Apexes, actually. So, yeah. If you want to see this style of giveaway again in the future, jump in on this one. That's going to be a cool build, too. Having that tarsier really far up front is going to be pretty slick. Kevin Sumner, I will be putting my new stickers on Etsy. I actually brought them home specifically so I can do some photography of them. I'll probably be getting to that maybe some tonight, definitely tomorrow. So here's how much prop in view you can expect on a Rip Squeak build with an internal Runcam hybrid. Let me get you some music. And this is how I'm going to... Freelojo bought a Clamman sticker today. He's going to be the first one on the wheel. Onlyprops.com. That's better. Okay. Let me just get this memory card up here. There it is, untitled. Let's see if there's anything on it. There is. Would you look at that? 25 megs. That's not it. 722 megs. That's the one. Where am I? Oh, this is when I was flying at the college that Maggie works at, GGC. Cool. All right. So this is also clear and gray front props, and you'll see what I mean. Like, you can barely tell that there's props in view, but you'll see them. Cool. Love you guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow night at 10. Here's some flight footage, and I love every single one of you. A little bit more than the person sitting, I don't know, than the person below you in chat. Love you guys. Be good. See you tomorrow night at 10. CiottiFPV.com. Join my Patreon. Click some affiliate links. Buy yourself something nice. Goodbye. Oh, why does the audio keep dying? Hold on, I have to restart OBS just to get audio. I'll be right back. There we go. Alright, fellas. See you tomorrow night. This is gonna play like shit, but whatever.